Today, we're going to take a look at how to do histograms on the TI-84. So first, just like with all of the other things that we've done in the stats unit, you need to click the Stat button, go to Edit, and type in your data. So I have already typed in the data for this example. We are looking at a bunch of students and how fast they can run 100 meters. L1 has the times in seconds for girls, and L2 has the times in seconds for boys. So this is the data we're looking at. We want to create a histogram. So all of the graphs that you create in the calculator, you're going to need to go to second y equals. Okay, so this is the stat plot or the graph kind of menu. I'm going to click into graph number 1. And I need to turn plot 1 on. So you can just make sure that you're hovering over on and hit enter. Second thing you need to do is say that you want a histogram. So if you go to type, this one is the histogram. It's a picture, it looks like a histogram, and click enter. Now, my data for the female runners was in L1, so I'm going to go ahead and graph that, and then leave the frequency as 1. Now, if I click the graph button in the top right, there's a graph and nothing shows up. That's because the zoom on our graph is not correct. So the first thing you should always do is at the top of your calculator, click the zoom button, and then you want to go down to option number 9. Zoom stat will zoom in so that your graph fits whatever scatter plot, histogram, box plot, whatever it is that you're graphing, fits well on the graph. So here we have a histogram. There are no labels, so what on earth do these bars represent? Going back to the top, if we click the trace button, we now have a little cursor, and this tells us that in the first bar that the width goes from 13.5 to 15, and that there are 7 girls that were in that range. And you can use the arrow keys and click to the right and see the range and the frequency for that category. Okay, well, what if I don't want my interval to be 1.5? I can change that. Again, at the top, you're going to click the window button, and you want to adjust the X-min, X-max, and X-scale. That is the first 3 options there. So X-min, let's say if you were looking at the activity, it starts with the interval 11 to 12. So I'm going to start with 11. And I think it only needs to go to 23. I'm going to count by 1. Now, there is a chance that you would need to adjust the Y min and the Y max if when you change the interval, all of a sudden you have a bar that's too tall and doesn't fit on the graph, you might need to adjust the Y min and Y max. Now I can just go back and click graph. So I have my graph. Again, I can click trace and scroll through each of these intervals. Now, if I want to check out the graph for the male runners, I can either change this graph or create a new graph. So I'm going to go back to second y equals, and I'm going to go down to plot 2. Turn this on, change this to a histogram, and say I would like this to be L2. Now let's graph that. So now I have the boys and the girls graphs overlaid. It is a little bit challenging to read, but you can click trace. Right now it's tracing the girls graph, and I know that because at the top it says plot 1 L1. If I click up arrow, then it'll switch to the red graph and I can see that I'm looking at plot 2, which is L2. And you can compare those and see what is different between the 100-meter run times for boys and girls. Now, if you need to put your graph back to normal, you can go back to second y equals, turn the plots off, and then click zoom 6. That'll take you back to the regular graph. Right? And that's all you should need to know about histograms.